texts 5 through 10. So Yudhisthira Maharaj is speaking with Bhima about the omens that he's saying, correct? Can we just read the English?
Yeah.
This time is short, okay. Translation. All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends. And in familial affairs, there was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers. Even between husband and wife, there was always strain and quarrel. And Yudhisthira is not used to seeing these things. So, Nitai, would you read the purport, please? Just read nice and loud.
The human being is endowed with four principles of malpractice, namely errors, insanity, inability, and cheating. These are signs of imperfection, and out of the four, the propensity to cheat others is most prominent. And this cheating practice is there in the conditioned souls because the conditioned souls are primarily in the material world, imbued with an unnatural desire to lord it over the material world. A living being in his pure state is not conditioned by the laws, because in his pure state he is conscious that a living being is eternally subservient to the Supreme Being, and thus it is always good for him to remain subservient, instead of falsely trying to lord it over the property of the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, the living being is not satisfied even if he actually becomes the lord of all that he surveys, which he never becomes, and therefore he becomes the victim of all kinds of cheating, even with his nearest and most intimate relations. In such an unsatisfactory state of affairs, there is no harmony, even between father and sons or between husband and wife. But all these contending difficulties can be mitigated by one process, and that is the devotional service of the Lord. The world of hypocrisy can be checked only by counteraction for devotional service to the Lord and nothing else. Maharaj Yudhishthira, having observed the disparities, conjectured the disappearance of the Lord from the earth.
Sukadeva Goswami calls the family members the Atma Sainishu, the fallible soldiers, in whom we feel that we will have shelter. If family is all right, if I have my family, everything will be fine. But this is an unfortunate mistake, because when we really need help, we can't get it from our family. And when we really need direction, we can't get it from our family. If our family are Vaishnavas, we are very fortunate, because that relationship can exist within the context of the greater understanding that God is our only shelter. So those of you who have spiritually minded parents are very fortunate. I remember when my father passed away, I was supposed to visit him the next day, but he passed away one day before. And my sister was there, and she was just trying to give him comfort, and there was nothing he could really grasp onto, because he wasn't really a committed Christian. He had a son like me who he didn't relate to. And his wife was there, and his daughter, but they couldn't do anything to help him. Help him have clarity, help him have peace of mind. And this is why we're so blessed in Krishna consciousness. We're actually prepared for life's greatest trials. There's so many painful things that happen in life, and the only satisfying response is a spiritual response. That somehow this has happened by God's will, and God must have some plan. And I knew this happiness that I was getting in this material sense was not going to last forever. So although it's painful to lose it, I am not bereft. I am not without direction. That's the great gift of Krishna consciousness. Any other reflections on this before we go on?
So, even same case for Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was surrounded by devotees, but despite of having that association, because of his attachment to material things was so high
Mm.
and so heavy that he could not. And then at last moment, Vidura came and he shattered all his desires and he said, okay, that's it. So,
Yes. Well, it's a very good point. This was just the previous chapter. You're reading about Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was just stuck because he didn't know what to do, so he just stayed in this rut. Even though he was degraded, even though his body was deteriorating, he just didn't have any other direction. So this is why Vidura was so merciful to him, to come and give him another direction out of life. You know, and we see this in older people, which of course don't include people like me. We tend to hang on. If we have some situation that is comfortable, that is has been fulfilling, we don't want to let it go. But we're forced to let it go. So it's so much better to voluntarily let it go. Prabhupada gave the example of politicians who hang on to the fag end of their lives. Mahatma Gandhi was one example, right? So when Gandhi was rallying the Indian populace, Prabhupada wrote to him and said, you've been in these politics for so many years, and now your followers are doing things you don't want them to do. And rather than just be degraded and just hang on, you should retire now and just focus on your Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada sent that letter, but there was no record that Gandhi ever received it. And within a couple of months, he was assassinated. So people, far beyond the years they should be doing these things, want to hang on to positions out of comfort. This is Dhritarashtra's condition. People might argue it's the current political leaders in the United States, they're both elderly. Thank you. They're both in their 70s and almost 80s. You know. Ronald Reagan, who was such a popular personality, began suffering from dementia in the last years of his presidency. And they joked, he said that it's not so bad, I can hide my own Easter eggs. My hide and seek, I can hide them myself, and then I forgot where they were. So, all right, here's some more of the anomalies that Yudhishthira is seeing. In course of time, it came to pass that people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, and so forth. Maharaj Yudhishthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother, Bhima. I sent Arjuna to Dwarka to meet his friends and to learn from the personality of Godhead, Krishna, about his program of work. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going there. So here is the difference between then and now. There would be no question. He would have texted and emailed Arjuna 5 times on the plane. So here's 7 months he hasn't heard, no message. And he's very anxious. Think about that for a moment, because these people were very sophisticated. Very sophisticated, but they just did not consider these things important because there's so much in the moment, so much in the present in their spirituality, that the idea of I've got to know everything everyone else is doing was not even on their consciousness. So now it's all about letting everyone know what you're doing. There's one person was writing and complaining about a friend who he went to a party and he just went around to each person at the party and took a selfie. And then he had 20 selfies, and then he posted them all on his whatever you call it, and said, I'm having so much fun at the party. The whole point was try to make other people feel he's enjoying, no matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable it was for him to take selfies with people. And what kind of fun is that anyway, just taking a picture of yourself over and over again? So it's very deep, actually, that Yudhishthira allowed this to happen and without any concern or anxiety. I'm hard-pressed to think of another example in Bhagavatam. Maybe you can think of one. where people were waiting extended periods for communication, and just patiently waiting.
Gopis for Krishna.
They're waiting, and Krishna would send them messages every now and again.
Rukmini.
Yes,
Brahma.
she sent the Brahmin, and she was waiting.
Snail mail.
Snail mail, yes, yes, even that slower.
These days it was a messenger who used to go.
Yes. And remember when Krishna got the message, he made the trip that would usually take some days. He made it in one night, right?
Krishna. What trip? Or Rukmini, yeah.
to rescue Rukmini. So actually, these elements of time and space are fluid, as Einstein correctly postulated, right? Time and space are independent substances. They're not all-pervading and controlling energies.
But it's strange that those days it was more opulent, more money was
Yes,
there,
yes.
they didn't have any fast method of connecting.
Even, yeah,
Now people are poor and there's so much industrialization. When we have the ways to communicate.
yes. You know, in the Mahabharata, when Mayadanava was rescued from the blazing forest fire by Krishna and Arjuna, he offered to Arjuna, "Oh, I will teach you the science of yantra. I'll teach you machines." And Arjuna said, "Okay, great." And then Krishna said, "No, no, 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 you don't want to know that."
Industrialization would have started way before.
Yes, all right. They didn't want it because the quality of life is adversely affected. Even in my life, I've seen how you used to be able to catch people's eye on the street when you're walking past them, say hello. Now they have earbuds and they are in their own world, and it's pretty much saying to the world, "I really don't want to talk to you. Don't talk to me, I won't talk to you, I don't want anything." I remember when the earphones first came out, I was in an airport, and I really had no idea of the technology. But some man behind me was saying something, and I thought he was talking to me while we were waiting in line. I turned around and said something back. Yes, he just looked at me like, "What's your problem?" So these were the sort of anomalies, really, that Yudhishthira was seeing. That communications among people had broken down, and now it's just standard. It's an artificial thing to communicate face to face. It's old-fashioned. It's not necessary. But at the University of Florida, the psychology department or the counseling department discovered that all the increases of suicides and depression and anxiety and stress was due to social media. They diagnosed it social media because people think they're connected, they think they have relationships, but in fact they're lonely and they're empty. So this interpersonal relationships, these interpersonal relationships are characteristic of a healthy society. Like in America, in India, you know all your neighbors, right? Whole neighborhood, you know everybody. Do you know your neighbor? Used to. Do you know your neighbors here?
Not this one, but previous apartment we are still in touch.
Yeah. So how many, hundreds of people live here, and how many do you know? Right?
Few families.
Yeah, three, four. Yeah. Yeah, and we rarely get together. Like my wife grew up in Brooklyn, and she said, and Brooklyn is it's a lower middle class neighborhood, and she said when we were growing up, we just walk out the front door, and on the street there was all kinds of kids, and we had plenty to do. That was all we needed. And even as a child, she was like 8, 9 years old, she could go and get on the subway and go here and there around the city. But now it's like people just holed up in their apartment with their internet and Netflix and email and TikTok. Nobody talks to each other. Kids get addicted to it at a very young age, and so easy for the parents to just say, "Okay, I need a break. Just watch this video for a while." All right? I'm not blaming. I'm just saying this is what happens.
So do you think kids should be exposed to technology and when they're young, or just try to avoid?
Minimize. Certainly minimize. If they become addicted to technology at a young age, it's very unfortunate. It stunts their growth and interaction and relationships.
it also affects them mentally and also like physically. They get glasses at a very young age.
Yes.
And then nowadays like there are violent games.
Yes.
So, like at very young age, they have this. It's so unnatural, to shoot and like hurt others, and they feel like it's natural because that's what they have been exposed to.
No, it's horrible, horrific. So what we're seeing is so much worse than what Yudhishthira was seeing. Just these gentle interruptions. So when he sees these interruptions, Yudhishthira says, "Is Krishna going to quit his earthly pastimes as Narada had indicated? Has that time already arrived?" So in the previous chapter, when Dhritarashtra all of a sudden was gone, along with Vidura and Gandhari, then Yudhishthira was absolutely distraught. He blamed himself. He said, "I haven't taken proper care of them," and he was lamenting. And Sanjaya, he went to Dhritarashtra's secretary, "Sanjaya, where are they? He's also cheated me. I've given him so many years of loyal service, and he just disappears." And so when they're in this angst, all of a sudden Narada Muni appears, as he does in every canto of Bhagavatam. Sometimes the Bhagavatam is called a glorification of Narada Muni by his disciple Vyasa. But when Narada comes, he assures him, first of all, Dhritarashtra is going to be fine. You don't have to worry about him. He tells exactly what's going to happen to him. He'll leave his body, and he'll find something to eat, don't worry. Then he says that, anyway, and Krishna will be leaving. He just kind of drops a hint, and then he goes. So, of course, this is what Yudhishthira has been fearing more than anything. And so now he's seeing these omens and thinking, maybe this is due to Krishna's departure. So, this chapter is called The Disappearance of Lord Krishna. The actual disappearance of Krishna takes place, is described in detail in chapter 11. So he hears from Arjuna that he disappeared, but how he disappeared is told in much later. Yeah. Prabhupada writes that Krishna's quitting one sort of body or accepting another body does not mean he is like an ordinary living being. All activities are simultaneously one and different by his inconceivable potency. When Maharaj Yudhishthira was lamenting the possibility of Krishna's disappearance, it was just in pursuance of a custom of lamenting the disappearance of a great friend. But factually, the Lord never quits his transcendental body, as is misconceived by less intelligent persons. So it's said even that Krishna left a material body to satisfy the atheists, because they so much wanted to see Krishna dead. Yes, yes. But he went through so many battles with so many terrific warriors and was unscratched by anyone except Bhishma, and which was a whole nother rasa, but because that's what Bhishma wanted to see. But this hunter, Jara, just hit Krishna in a non-lethal spot in his heel, and still Krishna was disappearing. So he knew, see, Krishna retired at the appropriate time. In fact, the next chapter is also described, that Pandavas retire timely. And I'll be very candid with you. I see God brothers, my dear God brothers who I've known for decades, who are attached to their positions, and they won't retire. And they should retire. So Bhaktisiddhanta said that a guru is judged not by the number of disciples, but by the number of gurus that they make. You follow? This is the measure. Not how many people will follow you, but how many people you can establish to lead others. So retiring is a very good thing. It's a very good thing to retire.
From the position of service, like
Yes. If there's someone else who can do it, then it's just common sense to turn it over to them. If there's somebody else competent, why hang on to it? If you hang on to it, then you're stuck. But if you turn it over to somebody competent, then you can go into other directions. See, it's a message I wish more of my God brothers could internalize. Because by the time you're in your 70s, things are falling apart. You know, it is better because you can no longer do what you could do previously, like travel extensively and work for hours and hours every day, actively going here and there. You know, Prabhupada was amazing because he did this up to the age of 81, but he had to do it. He had to do it because there was no one else. As that volume of the Lilamrita says, no one else could lead them. Right? So he had to do it, but we don't have to do it. And by holding on to these positions, we inhibit the growth of younger devotees. So this is one of the anomalies that is, you know, that we're dealing with in ISKCON. And if we don't voluntarily retire, then like Mahatma Gandhi, we will be forcibly taken out of our position. Like His Holiness Bhakti True Maharaj, such a wonderful devotee, and his departure was quite unexpected. He wasn't physically so deteriorated, but his ability to fight infection was down with age. And when he caught the COVID virus, he left his body within a short time. And so because he was going so strong, he didn't really think about empowering disciples to initiate and continue the disciplic succession of his particular branch. Nor did Tamal Krishna Maharaj, same thing. Of course, he was only in his 50s. But this is the consequence of not being far-sighted. And retiring is fun. It's a great thing. It's wonderful. It's like having grandchildren. You know, having children is a trip. But having grandchildren, they come see you for an hour, you give them a lot of sugar, and you send them back to the parents. So retiring is like that. Then you have the satisfaction of seeing others grow. So this is the one of the lessons from this section of the Bhagavatam.
Does retiring mean like you still have to be there for your disciples?
Yeah.
Does retiring mean just from managerial positions?
Right. From management positions, in terms of the parampara from initiating. Yeah, why should you continue to initiate if you have disciples who can initiate? Prabhupada never had that luxury. He toyed with the idea, he wanted to do it. He said, all of my sons and daughters can initiate disciples once they pass this test, maybe by 1975, he said. And you can see that was his vision. But then some ambitious disciples kind of were prematurely lobbying to be gurus, and then he kind of quelled it. But he was 80, and his disciples were 20s, you know, in their 20s. And it was not the same as being in your, like, say in your 70s, and you have disciples in your 40s and 50s who've been chanting Hare Krishna for 20 years, he said.
But currently there is still the rule that when your guru is alive...
Yes, it's changing slower than the glaciers are melting.
So I guess no one is able to assign anyone.
Not as yet, and there's a lot of push in that direction, and again, the people who are making the decisions are the same ones who are doing it. So it's hard for them to let go.
It's also very natural to do it that way. Even in material life also we
Yes.
have it. Because while your guidance is still around you, you can still...
Makes it easier for people to take more responsibility and guarantees the quality, or helps guarantee at least the quality of service will continue.
I have a question, the Prabhupada, like you would say that I would want to, like, he said I would never retire, I want to die in the battle like Bhishma.
He did not want to retire from preaching. Yeah. But he wanted to retire from management. He,
Just so you appoint a GBC, like to take care.
yes. He appointed the GBC so he could train them, and then they made some foolish mistake, and he disbanded them just to teach them, and then he reassigned them. So he wanted to retire from management, and you see that he was so willing to turn over the leadership, and the GBC would meet sometimes in his presence. And once they called for a vote, and he raised his hand to vote, like with the others. Yes, just everyone laughed, but just to encourage and to show that the leadership really was with the committee and not with him. Turning over responsibility. He wanted to keep preaching. He wanted to keep writing books. He didn't want to be, and this is something that's true of almost all old people. They don't want to be physically incapacitated. That's what most of us fear more than anything. You guys are so young that it doesn't even register on your list of anxieties. But when you start losing certain faculties, then you have to think, oh my goodness, what would it be like if I can't take care of myself? And the idea of imposing on somebody to take care of you is very difficult to accept. I remember when my father had to stop driving. He got in some minor accident, and he was intelligent and realized, no, it's not safe for me to drive anymore. It's unfortunate nobody had to take the keys. And he had other people who could drive him. But my mother got in a rather serious accident that the police decided was her fault, although it was questionable. But anyway, it was a pretty serious accident. She had some broken bones. But then she's bought another car. She's probably like almost 90 years old. She bought another car and was determined that she didn't want to be dependent on anyone driving her around. She wanted to be independent. Unfortunately, she gave it up after a while. But you don't want to be, so when I hear that statement from Prabhupada, I feel like he didn't want to be confined to a bed, and you see in his very, very infirm state, he asked his disciples to take him to go to London, to Gita Nagari. He wanted to go all the way to America. And then when that proved too difficult, they came back from London to Vrindavan. Then he wanted to go on parikrama with his padayatra disciples. So he didn't want to just be bedridden. That was the point. See, the Babaji order means they retire. I'm not having anything to do with any worldly things anymore. I'm just going to sit and chant. That's what his Guru Maharaj did as a young man. He took this vow to chant 1 billion names of Krishna, which is about 10 years of 160 rounds a day.
This was before his initiation, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he chanted.
It was after his initiation, and remember, he was initiated by Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji. So that was the MO. Okay, you're going to be a Vaishnava, you're going to be a Babaji. So he practiced that for several years until his father was too infirm to go to some kind of a conference. So he asked Bhaktisiddhanta to do that, and he did so. And then at the conference, Bhaktisiddhanta was preaching very successfully. So it was shortly after that he was recruited to help lead this Gaudiya Math preaching movement. So the point is that the Vaishnava does not retire like the Babaji. And this conversation that you're referring to, some disciples asked Srila Prabhupada, when we're older, can we retire to Mayapur? And Prabhupada said, yes, you may do that. I'm not advanced enough. I want to die on the battlefield. Let me die on the battlefield like Arjuna.
So we call, like, even if we become old, we continue to serve, but in a different capacity rather than as a youth.
Yes. We continue to serve in some capacity, and this is why, like, taking care of your health as a young person is a great investment. It gives you more options as you grow older. We see, you're probably seeing in your experience older devotees with physical limitations, and you'll see that more and more in the coming years. And so any exercises you do, like Giri Raj Maharaj is maintaining his health at 75 by that diligent, determined daily walk, pretty vigorous walk, right? Every day. It's like every day. And doing things like that when you are younger allows you to extend your use of your body. And if you are fortunate enough not to get in a car accident or get some crippling disease.
So you're talking about how gurus can empower the disciples to initiate when they're old enough. That's always been the case of seems like very exemplary, but what else other people follow that since it's already approved?
Each individual case has to be approved by the whole GBC.
Okay.
The GBC's position currently is that this statement Prabhupada made that it is not proper etiquette to initiate in the physical presence, in the presence of your guru. That's like Mahavakya. But many people see the foolishness of that. And when Prabhupada made that statement, it was at an entirely different set of circumstances. So gradually it is being rescinded. But the Jayadvaita Maharaj was just basically refused to initiate disciples. He initiated, I think he's initiated less than 10 disciples. And you really have to be determined to become his disciple. But he delegated that responsibility to Kadamba Maharaj and got the blessings.
Why is it not there in the history of our sampradaya where gurus are empowering their disciples to also
It is. It's just ISKCON is such a new phenomenon.
It is there?
In our tradition?
In our tradition?
Yes, in most cases. In most cases, in the Chaitanya Leela is our most recent example, and in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see how people would become inspired by somebody and be initiated by them directly, without regard to who is there, whether their initiating guru was present or not. There's, oh, this person inspires me. I want to take initiation from you, like Pundarik Vidyanidhi, Gadadhar. Right, it was Gadadhar Pandit who accepted him as his guru, just on the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so all these, even male-female things. You read the histories. There's not such intense discrimination. How are we doing for time here? Okay. Okay, so anyway, so much to discuss. We can talk more in the car on the way to New Dwarka, all right? So the last text, 9, Yudhisthira says, from Krishna only did we get all of our opulence, our good wives, our lives, progeny, control over our subjects, victory over our enemies, and future accommodations in higher planets. All this is due to Krishna's causeless mercy. So these are the anxieties that Yudhisthira is feeling. And now, next he goes into detail about all of the anomalies. All right? All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.